Good morning.
What are you marching about then?
Well, we're marching for government reform on childcare, flexible working and parental leave. Mothers are just furious. We've had enough. We feel like we are being set up to fail. We have the second most expensive childcare system in the developed world in the UK. We have a parental leave scheme that pays just 47% of the national minimum wage, meaning that many babies are being born into poverty or mothers are being forced to return to work well before they're ready. Dads only get 2 weeks paternity leave and are not encouraged to take any longer, and 1 in 4 don't even take their 2 weeks. And we had a government manifesto pledge that flexible working will become the default, and we haven't seen that happen, that materialise. And, you know, parents need some form of flexibility in the workplace to be able to manage their unpaid labour and their paid labour, and yet only 10% of jobs are advertised as part-time. So we just feel like everything is against us. You know, families need 2 incomes in order to survive, and yet we've got this structure that means that many mothers are either unable to work or they're being forced to work fewer hours than they would like to.
I just know that there are people watching at the moment who will say, if you want to have children, you've got to understand it. Why should the government support you just because you chose to be a parent?
And we hear that a lot. The reason why we should all care about this is because investing in families is an investment in the economy. We keep hearing about growth from politicians, but you can't have growth unless you liberate the power and the skills of women. We are 50% of the labour market. And we know, if we look at countries, say, like Canada, they've just invested $30 billion in their childcare sector, and they've not done this out of the goodness of their hearts. They've done it because they crunched the numbers and they found that for every dollar you invest in childcare, you get between $1.50 and $2.80 back into the wider economy. Investing in childcare is an investment in the economy.
Well, it may be. I haven't seen the figures. It may be. However, now's not the time you're going to get any investment, is it? I mean, look at what we're facing.
Well, we understand that Rishi Sunak is under an enormous amount of pressure. We realise he's an ambitious Prime Minister, and we really want him to be ambitious for women too. We want him to realise that if he doesn't act soon, we're going to see more and more women leaving the labour market right in the middle of a skills crisis. You know, companies are crying out for talented people, and yet we've got at least 870,000 highly skilled women who are stay-at-home mums. They don't want to be, they want to be working. And they could do so much for our economy if we created the system that works for them.
Should it be the government that is doing something about childcare, or should it be employers? I mean, if we want to get women back into the workplace once they've had their baby, maybe, or while they're pregnant, surely it should be up to the private companies, the employers, to provide that incentive to get that workforce back into their workplace, and maybe not the governments, particularly at the moment.
And we have seen companies take some action on this, because really savvy companies can see that if they enable parents to return to work after they've had a baby, that it's really good for the company, because, you know, you get all these talented women in particular back, and you retain them, actually, if you do build the system that works for them. But not enough are doing it. And, of course, smaller employers can't afford to create those provisions. And actually, we are way behind other countries on this, way, way behind. As a proportion of GDP, we invest very little in children before the age of 5. It's about 0.4% of GDP. And so why not copy what other countries have done, look at the evidence where they have reaped the benefits of investing in childcare?
Do you know, the one thing that bothers me, and I say this as someone who is not a parent compared to someone who clearly is, and Anne's who's had 5 babies, I mean, I feel slightly underqualified. However, I do sort of think, does it not feel a little bit like the stay-at-home mum is being frowned upon, looked down on a little bit? Well, if you're not going out to her, what are you doing?
I don't feel that that's what we are saying or anybody else is saying. Stay-at-home parents should absolutely be valued.
It's whether you can afford to be a stay-at-home parent.
Exactly. It's firstly whether you can afford it, because as we know now, you really do need 2 incomes in a household in order to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. And so, you've got to enable parents to work, but also many mums want to work. We have dreams too. And so if you create a structure so women are forced to stay at home, they're going to be miserable and they're going to be depressed. And so the kids are going to be miserable and depressed. So it's about choice, really. It's about creating an environment where women really do have choice. They're not forced to stay at home if they don't want to or if they need to be at work.
And if I were Rishi Sunak, I'd say I probably can't afford to give you that choice at the moment. It's a luxury we cannot afford.
But, as I keep saying, it's an investment. It will. We've seen a mass exodus of women from the workforce. We've seen a big increase of women who are of childbearing age, who have young children, suddenly leaving the workforce, particularly in the last year. And that's because we've seen a big increase in childcare costs. We've seen a big decrease in childcare availability. Is that what we want? Do we want to push women out of the workforce? What would that do to our economy? It would break it. It would crash it, as well as crashing families who can't afford to survive. So, he's got to act decisively and he's got to act soon, because otherwise we will see child poverty increase and we will see families on the streets. And this is good for our economy.